Yes, guys, I'm back here with the Craft of the Draft Boys. We're doing our club-by-club draft analysis, starting things off here with the Brisbane Lions, who hold picks 27, 34, 42, 43, 49, 60, and 66. Now, they hold all of those picks because they have a father-son player and an academy player coming up in this draft, so they've banked a lot of points with late picks. So we'll kick this one off with probably one of the biggest players in this draft, which is Levi Ashcroft, guys. I'll go to you, Jonty. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think Levi Ashcroft gets bid on at number 5 by Melbourne. That's my belief. I think that's lower than what he would go in an open draft. We've seen traditionally those players who do have bids come a little bit lower than they would go in an open draft. That's been the case for a decade or more, and that's part of, I guess, the wheelings and dealings of AFL clubs and trying to maintain relationships. And that's something that's really traditional.
Can I just cut you off there? Do you have a specific reason why you think, say, Richmond at 1, North Melbourne or Carlton wouldn't do it?
We had the discussion the other day about the pick swap that Richmond did, so I do question whether that comes into it. And Melbourne at 5 is more of a gut feel than anything else. So yeah, I'll answer it with that. In terms of Levi Ashcroft, I think he's one that would slot into an AFL club and be absolutely AFL ready. We saw what he was able to do for Brisbane's VFL this year, 30 plus touches, just like his brother did a couple of years ago playing a VFL game. I think at Trevor Barker Oval, and he's one that has to get into the lineup. But the question mark for Brisbane is, how do you fit him into a premiership team?
That's the big one. I'll cross here to you, Nathan. How do you think, who comes out of that side if Levi Ashcroft, you almost can't not play him, given the quality of the football that he's putting up and what his brother's done making that transition. Do you think they can accommodate him?
It's really hard. I'm sitting here looking at that grand final team and shaking my head who would genuinely come out. I mean, the only player I could maybe make a case for would be a Jasper Fletcher type, but you're playing him on the outside. I guess it's not really a like for like in that matter. So it'd be very tough. I reckon it will come down to injuries. It's inevitable that someone's going to get injured in the preseason. I feel like that's just the way footy works sometimes.
I guess the question here is, like, do we think... We've really only seen Levi Ashcroft play in the midfield. Do you think he's versatile enough to be moved into, a half-forward flank, a wing?
I was going to say that, yeah. I think he starts off half-forward, personally. I think he's got that scoreboard impact. He's got the ability to move the ball, kick it inside 50 really well. So I think you can start him as a half-forward who has time in the midfield. And then, as injuries build up throughout the year or as seasoned players do retire down the track, obviously he's a full-time midfielder.
Does he make them better?
Yes.
Oh, of course he makes him better. I mean, you compare him to his brother, and I've always said Levi's got a lot more upside than Will, I think, especially the forward half. Will, you know what you're going to get. He knows how to find the footy, move it forward, and that's been his specialty. He had the size, I guess, at under 18 level, at AFL level. He's just kind of fits in, and he's an accumulator, but he's still very good with his disposal. I always question his hack kicking forward, but I feel like he's tidied that up, and we saw that at the back end of this year coming back from the ACL. But Levi, you've got on top of that forward threat. Like, he's a genuine threat in the forward line just compared to a midfielder who can occasionally hit the scoreboard. So that's what I love about him, and that versatility to just do a few different things and catch you off guard.
100%. They both have just a sort of ruthless efficiency, don't they?
They do, yeah.
The Ashcrofts. Yeah. It's just unbelievable sort of football pedigree.
And I think that Levi's got that from a younger age, like you said, Nathan, than what Will did. And I think that's really important for Brisbane. I'm just going to dovetail here for a second because they've got Joe Danaher, who's retired. It's going to change their forward mix a little bit. If there's a player outside of Levi Ashcroft and Sam Marshall, who we'll get back to in a second, that I think they should take, it's a ready-made key forward if they could find one. So with one of those later picks or a rookie, I do question, do you take someone like a Brody McLaughlin, who's been on an AFL list, has been one of the best VFL players for the last couple of years at Williamstown and the Gold Coast, kicks lots of goals. He's sort of that third tall type while Logan Morris is still developing. Is he someone that can come in and assist? And Liam McMahon is another one who has garnered AFL interest, a former Collingwood listed player. I think he fits a real list need if they could get someone in that could play immediately, but it would probably have to be a mature ager given that Joe Danaher's retired and they don't have someone to immediately probably fill that fort.
It's a really good point that you make. The issue around that, and we'll get on to this next guy that we're going to talk about, which is Sam Marshall, who is garnering top 20 interest. If you look at the points that they have at the moment, 2,531. If Ashcroft goes top 5, top 3. It's still a possibility. I know you mentioned 5, but top 3 is a possibility. If Marshall's in the top 20, they're really struggling for points here and could go into a deficit in the next year. We'll start with Sam Marshall. How we talked about it being tough to fit Levi Ashcroft into this team. What about Sam?
I think Sam Marshall, and I know you concur with me, Nathan, we've had chats off air, is one that's going to have to work his way into the team. And I think if he went to an approximation 15 of the other 18 clubs, he'd be a round 1 starter with the work rate and some of those attributes that are immediately transferable to AFL level. The defensive running is something that's really important that he certainly possesses in spades, but I just don't know how you can fit 2 18, 19-year-olds into a lineup that, if is uninjured, is probably the perfect lineup based on the fact they've won the premiership.
I feel like he plays that similar type of game to a Will Ashcroft type where they're not necessarily he's not going to impact per possession as heavily, and he just accumulates and uses it well. He's just that sneaky one who racks up 20 touches. So it's that type of player where you can afford to be without them. I feel like you can make up enough of those players in a squad usually. So my question is, what's his role at the next level? What's he develop into eventually to really crack in and establish himself?
For me, he starts as a halfback winger and then moves inside eventually.
Yeah, exactly the same. Windsor is the perfect, I see Sam Marshall just coming into the AFL. He'll just run up and down, get the ball out of D50, help on the ball movement. And I think like you said, if he was going to any other team, he gets in. Yeah, absolutely. I think the one other important aspect to touch on is that, Brisbane still will have probably some points shuffling to do depending on where the bids do come for those 2 players. They've got Dan Annabelle next year, who's a really highly regarded player, probably goes in the first round and could go as high as the top 10 in an open draft. He's another midfielder who they're probably going to want to match a bid for as well. So you've got to be mindful of that in terms of your points. You can't go into too much deficit where you're snookered and you can't get Dan Annabelle. 100%. I think that is a wrap for the Lions. We've covered off most of the points there, guys. So that is a wrap for this video. We'll have plenty more of these ones coming out in the future. We'll see you next time.